My name is Bonnie, and I am 27 years old. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. The day my body went numb from the waist down. The day my brother Jason stood over me laughing at his cruel prank while I lay motionless on the concrete. The day my father yelled, "Walk it off! Stop being a baby!" And my mother accused me of ruining Jason's birthday party. They had no idea that their dismissal of my pain would soon make them criminals. If you have ever had your suffering ignored by the people who should care the most, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button and stay for a story about the day my family's betrayal changed my life forever. Growing up in the Matthews household was like walking on eggshells. Our family appeared perfect from the outside. A beautiful suburban home in Massachusetts, a father who was a successful accountant, a mother who was the ideal homemaker, and 2 children who excelled in school. But appearances can be deceiving. My father, Douglas Matthews, was a 6'2" in Tower of Stoicism, a man who believed showing emotion was a sign of weakness. He had been raised by a military father who taught him that pain was just weakness leaving the body. Unfortunately, he passed these toxic beliefs down to his children, especially his firstborn son, Jason. "Bonnie, you need to toughen up," was my father's mantra throughout my childhood. Whether I was dealing with a scraped knee, a broken heart, or legitimate illness, his response was always the same: minimize, dismiss, move on. My mother, Eleanor, was not much better. While she occasionally showed glimpses of nurturing, her primary allegiance was always to my father and Jason. She was a nervous woman who seemed perpetually afraid of upsetting the delicate balance of our household. If acknowledging my pain meant disrupting that balance, she would choose denial every time. "Your brother would never complain about something like that," she would say, drawing unfavorable comparisons that cut deeper than any physical wound. Then there was Jason, my older brother by 3 years, now 31. He had spent his entire life as the golden child, the son who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Athletic, charismatic, and manipulative, Jason learned early that he could get away with anything as long as he maintained his facade of perfection in front of our parents. I still remember when I was 7 and Jason was 10. He had pushed me off my bike, causing me to break my wrist. When I cried to our parents, Jason claimed I had fallen on my own because I was clumsy. They believed him without question. At the hospital, my father lectured me about being more careful while my mother fretted about the medical bills. Not once did they consider that Jason might be lying. This pattern continued throughout our childhood and into our adult years. Jason would torment me with pranks that crossed the line into cruelty, and our parents would either ignore his behavior or blame me for provoking him. When I was 12, Jason locked me in our basement for hours during a thunderstorm, knowing I was terrified of the dark. When I finally escaped and confronted our parents, they accused me of making up stories for attention. At 16, Jason sabotaged my science project the night before it was due, causing me to fail the assignment. When I told my parents, they suggested I should have been more prepared and not left everything to the last minute. By the time I reached adulthood, I had learned to keep my distance from my family. I moved out at 18 to attend college in another state, coming home only for major holidays and family events. I built a life for myself as an elementary school teacher, found friends who actually cared about my well-being, and started therapy to address the damage my upbringing had caused. But family ties are hard to sever completely. No matter how much I tried to create boundaries, guilt and obligation would always pull me back into their orbit. Which is why when my mother called to insist I attend Jason's 31st birthday celebration, I reluctantly agreed. It had been 6 months since I had seen any of them, and part of me hoped that time and distance might have improved our relationship. "It would mean so much to your brother if you came," my mother said, though I doubted Jason cared about my presence at all. "We are having a backyard barbecue and your father is setting up the new pool deck. Everyone will be there." By everyone, she meant Jason's friends, most of whom were as obnoxious and entitled as he was. The thought of spending an afternoon with them made my stomach churn, but I had run out of excuses. "Fine, I will be there," I agreed, already regretting my decision. Wonderful. And please dress nicely. You know how important appearances are to your father? That comment stung as it was meant to. My mother knew I had recently embraced a more casual style, trading in the preppy outfits my parents approved of for clothes that actually made me comfortable. It was a small act of rebellion, but in the Matthews household, even the smallest deviation from their expectations was treated as a major transgression. As I hung up the phone, I tried to prepare myself mentally for what was to come. I would go to the party, make small talk for a few hours, give Jason a generic birthday card with some cash inside, and leave as soon as socially acceptable. I could handle one afternoon of discomfort if it meant several more months of peace away from them. What I could not have known was that this birthday party would be the last time I would ever walk without assistance. That the casual cruelty that had characterized my relationship with Jason for years would finally escalate to a point of no return. That my parents' refusal to take my pain seriously would cross the line from emotional neglect to criminal negligence. I packed an overnight bag, planning to stay at a hotel rather than in my childhood bedroom. Even that small boundary was important to me, a reminder that I was no longer under their control. I chose an outfit that would pass my father's inspection while still allowing me to feel like myself. Dark jeans, a blue blouse, and comfortable flats. Appropriate for a casual party, but not so formal that I felt like I was playing dress-up. As I drove the 2 hours to my parents' house, I practiced the techniques my therapist had taught me for dealing with difficult family situations. Deep breathing, visualization, reminding myself that I was an adult now with the power to leave if things became too uncomfortable. But all the therapy in the world could not have prepared me for what awaited me at that birthday party. No amount of deep breathing could prevent the catastrophe that was about to unfold, or heal the physical and emotional scars that would follow. I arrived at my parents' house at precisely 2 o'clock in the afternoon, timing my entrance to coincide with the official start of the party. This was a deliberate strategy to minimize one-on-one interaction with my family. In a crowd, it would be easier to blend in to avoid becoming the sole target of their attention. The driveway was already filled with cars, most of them expensive, SUVs and sports cars belonging to Jason's friends. I recognized a few vehicles, including the red Corvette that belonged to his best friend Tyler, who had been equally complicit in tormenting me during our childhood. My mother greeted me at the door with an air kiss and a once-over that told me my outfit had passed inspection, if just barely. "Bonnie, you made it. Everyone is out back. Your brother just opened his presents." Of course, they had started the gift-giving without waiting for all the guests to arrive. It was a subtle reminder that my presence was not essential, merely tolerated. The living room was filled with expensive wrapped packages, the remnants of what appeared to be an extravagant gift-opening session. I spotted a new set of golf clubs, designer clothing, and what looked like keys to some kind of vehicle. "We got him that jet ski he has been wanting," my mother informed me proudly, gesturing to a photograph of the watercraft that sat atop one of the larger boxes. "Your father is having it delivered next week." I nodded, feeling the familiar pang of inequity. For my 30th birthday, 6 months earlier, they had sent a gift card to a department store. The disparity was nothing new, but it still hurt. I placed my own gift, a simple card with $200 inside on the table with the others, and followed my mother through the house to the backyard. The scene that greeted me was exactly what I had expected. About 30 people, mostly men in their early 30s, drinking beer and lounging around the newly constructed pool deck. My father was playing host at the grill, flipping burgers and steaks with the precision of someone who had spent a lifetime mastering the art of suburban masculinity. Jason was holding court near the pool, surrounded by his usual entourage. He had a beer in one hand and was gesturing animatedly with the other, likely regaling his friends with some exaggerated tale of his own importance. He had gained weight since I had last seen him, his once athletic frame now showing the effects of too many nights of heavy drinking and not enough exercise. When he spotted me, he broke away from his group and approached with the artificial enthusiasm of someone who feels obligated to acknowledge a distant acquaintance. "Little sis, you decided to grace us with your presence after all?" His words were friendly enough, but the gleam in his eyes was anything but warm. He pulled me into a hug that was too tight, too aggressive, a physical reminder of the power dynamic that had defined our relationship for decades. "Happy birthday, Jason," I replied, extracting myself from his embrace as quickly as possible. "The place looks great. Dad spent a fortune on that new deck," he said, gesturing to the wooden structure that surrounded the in-ground pool. Custom-built Brazilian hardwood cost him nearly $20,000. Again, the unspoken comparison hung in the air. Our parents would spare no expense for Jason's comfort and status. While my requests and needs had always been treated as burdensome impositions, I excused myself to get a drink, opting for water rather than alcohol. I knew from experience that I needed to keep my wits about me in these situations. Alcohol would only dull my defenses and make me more vulnerable to their manipulation. For the next hour, I managed to avoid direct interaction with my family by engaging in polite conversation with some of the other guests. There were a few spouses and girlfriends present who seemed equally uncomfortable with the increasingly rowdy atmosphere, and we formed a quiet alliance of the outsiders. But as the afternoon wore on and the alcohol flowed freely, I could sense the energy shifting. Jason and his friends became louder, their behavior more obnoxious. They started reminiscing about their high school days, swapping stories that invariably involved humiliating someone they deemed beneath them. Eventually, inevitably, Jason turned his attention to me. "Hey, remember that time we convinced Bonnie that the neighbor's dog had rabies?" He called out loud enough for everyone to hear. She was so scared she refused to go outside for a week. His friends laughed, and I felt my cheeks burn with the familiar mixture of embarrassment and anger. I had been 8 years old when Jason and his friends had told me that the friendly Labrador next door had a deadly disease and was going to attack me. The fear had been real, as had the nightmares that followed. "Or the time we switched her shampoo with hair removal cream," Tyler added, slapping his knee as if this act of cruelty was the height of comedy. That particular prank had happened when I was 14. I had been forced to wear hats to school for weeks while my hair grew back in patches. My parents had told me to stop being so dramatic about it. I took a deep breath and started to gather my things. I had reached my limit, and no obligation to family was worth subjecting myself to this kind of humiliation. But as I turned to leave, Jason intercepted me. "Leaving so soon? The party is just getting started." His words were slurred, his eyes unfocused. He was drunk, which always made him more unpredictable, more dangerous. "I have a long drive back," I said firmly, trying to step around him. But Jason blocked my path. "Come on, sis. Loosen up. Have a drink with us." For old time's sake, I knew this routine, the forced camaraderie that would inevitably lead to some form of public humiliation. I had fallen for it too many times in the past. "No thanks, Jason. I really need to go." His face hardened, the mask of friendliness slipping to reveal the cruelty beneath. Still the same uptight Bonnie. Some things never change. I walked away, heading toward the sliding glass door that led back into the house. I just needed to grab my purse from the living room, say a quick goodbye to my parents, and I could escape this toxic environment. But fate, or perhaps Jason's malice, had other plans. To reach the house, I needed to cross a section of the new pool deck. As I stepped onto the wooden boards, I immediately sensed something was wrong. The surface felt strangely slick beneath my flats. I glanced down and noticed a slight sheen on the wood, almost imperceptible, unless you were looking for it. In that moment, I knew what was about to happen, but it was already too late to prevent it. My foot slid forward, violently, throwing me off balance. I tried to catch myself, arms flailing, but the slipperiness was too complete, too deliberate. My other foot shot out from under me, and I felt my body falling backward. Time seemed to slow down. I could see Jason and his friends watching their expressions, a mixture of anticipation and cruel amusement. I could see my father turning from the grill, my mother pausing in her conversation with another guest. And then came the impact, not with the wooden deck as I had expected, but with the concrete lip of the pool. My lower back and head struck simultaneously, a double blow that sent shooting pain up my spine and exploded like fireworks behind my eyes. I heard someone scream, and only later would I realize the sound had come from me. The world tilted and spun colors blurring together as my vision swam in and out of focus. When things finally stabilized, I was lying flat on my back, staring up at the clear blue sky. The pain in my head was excruciating, but what terrified me more was what I could not feel anything below my waist. "Help!" I gasped, my voice barely audible even to my own ears. The impact had knocked the wind out of me, and I was struggling to breathe properly. "Please help me. I cannot feel my legs." The first face that appeared in my field of vision was Jason's. He was looming over me, and to my horror, he was smiling. "Nice pratfall, sis. Very dramatic." He turned to his friends. She always was a theater kid. I tried to move to sit up, but my body would not cooperate. My arms worked, but when I attempted to shift my legs, there was nothing. No response, no sensation, just a terrifying void where the lower half of my body should have been. "I am serious," I said, my voice stronger now, edged with panic. "Something is wrong. I cannot move my legs. I think I hit my back on the concrete." Jason rolled his eyes, still convinced this was some kind of performance on my part. "Come on, get up. You are embarrassing yourself." "I cannot get up." I was crying now, tears of pain and fear streaming down my face. "Please call an ambulance. I think I am really hurt." By this point, a small crowd had gathered around me. I could see curiosity and discomfort on their faces, but no one was moving to help. They were taking their cues from Jason, assuming this was just another family drama playing out for their entertainment. My father pushed through the onlookers, his face set in a mask of irritation. "What is going on here, Bonnie? Why are you on the ground?" "Dad," I sobbed, relief washing over me. Surely my father would take this seriously. I slipped and fell. I hit my back on the pool ledge. I cannot feel my legs. I need to go to the hospital. I expected concern, urgency, immediate action. What I got instead was a dismissive scoff. "For God's sake, Bonnie, the deck is perfectly safe. I just had it installed by professionals." He gestured impatiently. "Walk it off. Stop being a baby. You are making a scene at your brother's party." The words hit me like a physical blow. Even now, even when I was literally unable to move, my pain was being dismissed, my experience invalidated. "Douglas, maybe we should help her up," my mother suggested, appearing at his side. But her concern was not for my well-being. "People are watching." "I cannot get up," I repeated, my voice rising with desperation. "I need an ambulance. Please, Mom, Dad, I am begging you. Something is seriously wrong." My mother knelt beside me, her voice lowered to an angry whisper. "Bonnie Matthews, that is enough. You have always been jealous of your brother's attention, but this is taking things too far. You are ruining his birthday party with this performance." I could not believe what I was hearing. The pain in my back was intensifying, radiating outward in waves that made it difficult to concentrate. My head was throbbing where it had struck the concrete, and I was starting to feel nauseated. "I think I'm going to be sick," I moaned, turning my head to the side. "She is probably drunk," I heard Jason tell someone. Classic Bonnie cannot handle her alcohol. I had not had a single drink all day, but facts had never mattered in my family's narrative about me. The sun beating down on my face was making the nausea worse. I was sweating profusely, and a strange tingling sensation had started in my fingertips. I knew these were bad signs, possibly indicators of shock or internal bleeding. "Please," I whispered, no longer having the energy to shout. "I need help." My father had walked away, returning to the grill as if nothing was happening. My mother was making excuses to the guests, telling them I had always been prone to episodes and that they should continue enjoying the party. Jason had lost interest entirely, moving back to his group of friends who were now loudly discussing plans to take the new jet ski out the following weekend. I was alone, immobile in agony, surrounded by people who were choosing to ignore my suffering. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain ever could. Then, from the edge of my fading consciousness, I heard a new voice. Firm, authoritative female. "Excuse me, I am a nurse. Let me through, please." The crowd parted, and a woman I did not recognize knelt beside me. She had kind eyes and capable hands that immediately went to my wrist, checking my pulse. "Hi there, I am Rachel. I work in the ER at Massachusetts General." "Can you tell me your name?" "Bonnie," I managed to say through chattering teeth. I was cold now despite the summer heat. "Okay, Bonnie, I need you to stay very still. Can you tell me what happened?" I explained about the fall, the impact with the pool edge, and the immediate loss of sensation in my legs. Rachel's expression remained neutral, but I could see concern in her eyes. She leaned closer and spoke quietly. "I am going to check a few things, but I do not want you to move at all." "Okay." She gently pressed her fingers against various points on my legs, asking if I could feel the pressure. I could not. She asked me to wiggle my toes. Nothing happened. "I am calling an ambulance," she announced, pulling out her phone. "She does not need an ambulance," my mother protested, suddenly reappearing. "She just needs to get up and stop making a fuss." Rachel fixed my mother with a level stare. "Ma'am, your daughter has signs consistent with a spinal cord injury. Moving her could cause permanent damage. She needs emergency medical attention immediately." For the first time, a flicker of real concern crossed my mother's face. "Spinal cord injury. That is impossible. She just slipped. Falls are one of the most common causes of spinal injuries," Rachel replied, already dialing 911. "And from what I can see, she hit the concrete edge quite hard." As Rachel spoke with the emergency dispatcher, describing my condition and location, I saw my father approaching. His expression had shifted from annoyance to apprehension. "What is all this about an ambulance?" he demanded. Rachel, still on the phone, held up a hand to silence him. After giving the dispatcher the necessary information, she turned to address my father. "Sir, your daughter has potentially suffered a serious spinal injury. The paramedics will be here in about 10 minutes. Until then, it is absolutely crucial that she not be moved." My father's face palled for the first time. I think he was beginning to realize that this was not an act, not an attempt to steal attention or disrupt the party. This was real and it was serious. "How did this happen?" he asked, looking around as if searching for someone to blame other than himself. Through the fog of pain and fear, I managed to speak. The deck was slippery, like it had oil or something on it. My father's eyes narrowed. "That is ridiculous. I just had it sealed yesterday. It should not be slippery at all." But Rachel, ever observant, was already examining the wooden boards near where I had fallen. She touched the surface, then rubbed her fingers together. "This is not water," she said, her voice hardening. "This feels like some kind of lubricant." All eyes turned to Jason, who had wandered back over to see what the commotion was about. His face, flushed from alcohol, suddenly drained of color. "It was just a joke," he muttered, not meeting anyone's gaze. "Just a little prank. I put some of Dad's deck oil on a few boards. I thought she would slip a little and maybe fall in the pool. I did not think." He trailed off the implications of his actions, finally seeming to dawn on him. The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, as I lay immobile on the ground, I saw the truth of my family reflected in their faces. The casual cruelty that had defined our relationships, the willful blindness to the harm they caused, the reflexive protection of Jason at all costs. But this time, there would be consequences they could not ignore away. In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. The wailing sirens grew louder, cutting through the stunned silence that had fallen over the backyard. Rachel remained by my side, monitoring my condition and keeping everyone else at a distance. "Try to stay calm," she said softly. "Help is almost here. Just focus on your breathing." I was trying, but panic kept threatening to overwhelm me. The numbness in my lower body was terrifying, a void where sensation should be. Each breath sent new waves of pain through my back and head, and the nausea was intensifying. The party guests had begun to disperse, moving away from the scene of the accident, murmuring among themselves. Some were already leaving, not wanting to be involved in whatever was unfolding. Others watched from a distance, their expressions a mixture of morbid curiosity and discomfort. My mother hovered nearby, her earlier dismissiveness replaced by a nervous energy. She kept straightening her clothes, touching her hair, small gestures that betrayed her anxiety about how this would appear to others. "Do you really think this is necessary?" she asked Rachel. "Maybe we could just take her to urgent care ourselves." Rachel's response was firm. "Absolutely not. She needs proper immobilization and transport. Any improper movement could worsen a spinal injury." My father had gone to the front of the house to direct the paramedics while Jason stood frozen several feet away. The reality of what he had done finally seeming to sink in. The paramedics arrived with remarkable efficiency. 2 women and a man in uniforms wheeling a stretcher through the gate to the backyard. Rachel immediately briefed them on my condition and the circumstances of my fall. The lead paramedic, a woman named Sarah, according to her name tag, knelt beside me. "Hello, Bonnie. I am Sarah. We are going to take good care of you. Can you tell me where the pain is worst?" "My lower back," I managed to say, "and my head, but I cannot feel anything below my waist." Sarah nodded, her expression professional but kind. "We are going to put a cervical collar on you to stabilize your neck, and then we will carefully log roll you onto a backboard. It is important that you do not try to help us move you." "Okay, just stay as still as possible." As they worked, Sarah asked questions about the fall, how it happened, and whether I had lost consciousness. Rachel filled in details about my vital signs and the initial assessment she had done. Then, Sarah asked a question that changed everything. "Was the surface where you fell naturally slippery, or was there something on it that caused you to slip?" Before I could answer, Rachel spoke up. "There appears to be some kind of oil or lubricant on the deck boards. I believe it was placed there deliberately." Sarah paused in her work, looking up sharply. "Deliberately? Can you elaborate on that?" Her brother admitted to putting deck oil on the boards as a prank. Rachel said, her voice level, but with an undercurrent of anger. He intended for her to slip. Sarah and the other paramedics exchanged glances. Then Sarah turned to look at Jason, who was standing with his hands shoved in his pockets, staring at the ground. "Sir, is that accurate? Did you intentionally create a slipping hazard that caused this injury?" Jason shifted uncomfortably. It was just supposed to be a joke. I did not think she would get hurt like this. Sarah's expression hardened. She turned to her colleague. "Mike, can you check the deck surface and document what you find, please?" Mike nodded and moved to examine the area where I had fallen, taking photos with a small camera and collecting a sample of the substance on the deck. Meanwhile, the paramedics continued working methodically to immobilize me. They placed a rigid collar around my neck, then carefully positioned themselves to roll me as a unit onto the backboard. On my count, Sarah instructed 1, 2, 3. They moved me with practiced precision, but despite their care, the movement sent fresh agony through my body. I cried out, unable to suppress the sound. "I know it hurts," Sarah said sympathetically. "We will give you something for the pain as soon as we have you secured." Once I was strapped to the backboard, they transferred me to the stretcher and began attaching monitoring equipment. Sarah placed an oxygen mask over my face and inserted an IV line into my arm. "Your blood pressure is quite low," she noted, frowning at the monitor. "And your heart rate is elevated. We need to get you to the hospital right away." My mother finally seemed to grasp the severity of the situation. "Is she going to be all right?" she asked, her voice small. Sarah did not offer false reassurance. She has signs consistent with a significant spinal injury. The sooner we get her to a trauma center, the better her chances for recovery. As they prepared to move me to the ambulance, Mike returned from inspecting the deck. He spoke quietly to Sarah, showing her something on his camera screen. Her expression grew even more serious. Based on what I am seeing here and the circumstances described, I am going to request police assistance, she announced. Police? My father sputtered, returning from the front yard. Surely that is not necessary. This was just an unfortunate accident. Sarah fixed him with a level gaze. Sir, deliberately creating a hazardous condition that results in serious injury is not just an accident. Additionally, I understand there was a delay in seeking medical attention for your daughter, despite her reporting loss of sensation, which is a medical emergency. My father's face flushed with anger. Now wait just a minute. You cannot come into my home and make accusations like that. Dad, I said weakly from behind the oxygen mask, please, just let them help me. For once, my father fell silent. Sarah made a call on her radio requesting police presence at the scene. Then she turned back to me. We are going to move you to the ambulance now. The ride might be uncomfortable, but we will do everything we can to keep you stable. As they wheeled me through the house and out to the waiting ambulance, I caught a final glimpse of my family. My father arguing with Mike, gesturing angrily. My mother standing with her arms wrapped around herself, looking lost. And Jason still rooted to the same spot, watching as the consequences of his lifelong cruelty finally caught up with him. The last thing I saw before the ambulance doors closed was a police cruiser pulling into the driveway, lights flashing but sirens silent. In that moment, despite the pain and fear, I felt a strange sense of validation. For the first time in my life, someone was taking my suffering seriously. The ambulance pulled away, carrying me toward an uncertain future, but also away from the toxic environment that had caused me so much pain. As the medication they administered began to take effect, dulling the worst of the physical agony, I closed my eyes and surrendered to unconsciousness. I awoke to the rhythmic beeping of hospital monitors and the antiseptic smell that seems universal to all medical facilities. For a moment, I was disoriented, unsure of where I was or how I had gotten there. Then the memories came flooding back. The fall, the numbness, the paramedics, and finally the police arriving at my parents' house. A nurse noticed I was awake and approached my bedside. Welcome back, Bonnie. I am Carlos. You are at Massachusetts General Hospital. Do you remember what happened? I fell, I said, my voice raspy from the breathing tube that had apparently been removed at some point at my brother's birthday party. I could not feel my legs. Carlos nodded, making a note in my chart. That is right. You have been in and out of consciousness for about 12 hours now. The doctor will be in shortly to discuss your condition with you. Can I get you some water? I nodded gratefully, and he helped me take small sips through a straw. Even this simple movement caused pain to flare in my back. What is wrong with me? I asked, fear, making my voice tremble. Can I still not move my legs? Carlos's expression was compassionate but professional. The doctor will explain everything. She should be here any minute. Try to stay calm. As if on cue, a woman in a white coat entered the room. She was in her 50s with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. Good morning, Bonnie. I am Dr. Martinez, the neurosurgeon who has been overseeing your care. How are you feeling? Scared, I admitted. And in pain. What happened to me? Why can I not feel my legs? Doctor. Martinez pulled up a chair and sat beside my bed. When you fell, you suffered what we call an incomplete spinal cord injury at the T12L, the 1st of June section, which is in your lower back. The impact fractured 2 vertebrae and caused significant compression of your spinal cord. She showed me images from my MRI on a tablet pointing out the damaged areas. We performed emergency surgery to remove bone fragments and reduce the pressure on your spinal cord. We also stabilized your spine with rods and screws. Will I walk again? I asked the question that had been terrifying me since the moment I lost sensation in my legs. Dr. Martinez did not offer false hope, but neither did she extinguish it entirely. Spinal cord injuries are complex and outcomes can vary widely. The fact that yours is an incomplete injury is actually positive news. It means the spinal cord was not completely severed. She continued explaining that over the coming weeks and months, we would get a clearer picture of how much function I might recover. Some patients with similar injuries regain significant mobility, while others experience more limited improvement. A lot will depend on your individual healing process and how diligently you work with physical therapy. So I might be paralyzed forever. The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth. I would not use the term forever at this stage, Dr. Martinez replied carefully. But yes, you are currently experiencing paraplegia, which is paralysis affecting the lower limbs. We will work with you to maximize whatever recovery is possible, but you should be prepared for the possibility of long-term mobility challenges. The news hit me like a physical blow. I had entered my brother's birthday party as a healthy 28-year-old woman, and I was leaving it with a life-altering disability, all because of a prank and my family's refusal to take my pain seriously. There is something else we need to discuss, Dr. Martinez, said her tone, shifting slightly. The circumstances of your injury have prompted an investigation. There are 2 police officers waiting to speak with you when you feel up to it. I closed my eyes briefly, absorbing this information. My brother put oil on the deck. He admitted it. He wanted me to slip as a joke. Doctor. Martinez nodded. That is consistent with the information we received from the paramedics. And there seems to be some concern about the delay in seeking medical attention for you after the injury occurred. My parents did not believe I was really hurt. I said, the familiar pain of their dismissal washing over me again. They told me to walk it off. They accused me of being dramatic and trying to ruin Jason's party. A flash of something anger perhaps crossed Dr. Martinez's professional demeanor. In cases of suspected spinal cord injury, immediate immobilization and medical attention are crucial. Delays can significantly worsen the outcome. Are you saying that if they had called an ambulance right away, I might not be paralyzed? The implications of this were almost too much to bear. It is impossible to say with certainty, she replied carefully. But yes, in general, the sooner a spinal cord injury is treated, the better the prognosis. Every minute counts. I felt tears spilling down my cheeks. The injury itself was devastating enough, but knowing it might have been less severe if my family had simply believed me was an additional layer of betrayal I was not prepared for. Dr. Martinez gave me a moment to process, then asked, "Do you feel up to speaking with the police now, or would you prefer to rest first?" "I will talk to them," I decided. "I want them to know what happened." She nodded and left to get the officers. Carlos stayed, adjusting my position slightly, to make me more comfortable and offering tissues for my tears. The police officers who entered were both women, which somehow made me feel safer. They introduced themselves as Detective Sullivan and Officer Chen, explaining that they were investigating the circumstances surrounding my injury. "We understand this is difficult," Detective Sullivan said, "but we need to ask you some questions about what happened yesterday." I recounted the events as clearly as I could remember them arriving at the party. Jason's increasingly aggressive behavior, my attempt to leave the fall on the slippery deck, and most importantly, my family's response to my injury. So to be clear, Detective Sullivan clarified after you fell and reported that you could not feel or move your legs. No one called for medical assistance. Not until Rachel, the nurse who was at the party, intervened, I confirmed. That was at least 15 or 20 minutes after my fall. My father told me to walk it off, and my mother accused me of trying to ruin Jason's birthday. Officer Chen, who had been taking notes, looked up. "And your brother admitted to putting oil on the deck." "Yes. He said it was supposed to be a prank. He thought I would slip and fall into the pool. He did not think I would hit the concrete edge." The officers exchanged glances. "We should inform you." Detective Sullivan said that we have already taken statements from several witnesses at the scene, including the nurse Rachel Cooper and the paramedics who transported you. We have also collected evidence from the deck which confirmed the presence of deck oil in the area where you fell. She paused before continuing. Your brother Jason Matthews was taken into custody last night on charges of reckless endangerment resulting in serious bodily harm. Your parents, Douglas and Eleanor Matthews, are currently being investigated for negligence and failure to provide necessary medical assistance. The news stunned me. As much as my family had hurt me, I had never imagined them facing criminal charges. They could go to jail, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That will be up to the district attorney and ultimately the courts, Detective Sullivan replied. But yes, these are serious charges, especially given the severity of your injuries. They asked a few more questions, then me for my cooperation, and left, promising to keep me updated on the investigation. After they were gone, I lay in the hospital bed trying to process everything. The physical reality of my injury was overwhelming enough, but the legal and emotional implications of what had happened were equally staggering. No one from my family had called or visited. I wondered if they were legally prevented from contacting me, or if they were simply continuing their lifelong pattern of avoiding accountability for the harm they caused. As evening fell, a hospital social worker named Marcus came to see me. He explained that he would be helping coordinate my care plan, including rehabilitation options and resources for adjusting to life with a spinal cord injury. You are looking at a significant recovery period, he told me gently. After you are stable enough to leave acute care, you will likely need to spend several weeks in an inpatient rehabilitation facility, followed by ongoing outpatient therapy. I live alone, I said, the practical implications suddenly hitting me. My apartment has stairs. I teach elementary school, which means being on my feet all day. Marcus nodded understandingly. These are all challenges we will help you navigate. There are resources available for home modifications, vocational rehabilitation, and disability benefits. It is a lot to take in right now. I know indeed it was. In the space of 24 hours, every aspect of my life had been upended. My body, my home, my career, my family, relationships, all transformed in ways I was only beginning to comprehend. That night alone in my hospital room, I cried for everything I had lost, and everything that now lay uncertain before me. But beneath the grief and fear, a small spark of determination began to glow. I had survived my family's lifelong emotional abuse. Somehow I would survive this too, and for the first time, they would face consequences for their actions. The weeks following my injury passed in a blur of medical procedures, pain management, and the first tentative steps toward rehabilitation. I remained in the hospital for 14 days, during which time the full extent of my injury became clearer. Dr. Martinez explained that while the surgery had been successful in stabilizing my spine and relieving pressure on my spinal cord, there was significant damage that would take time to heal, if it healed at all. You have what we call an Asia-CL classification, she told me during one of her daily visits. This means you have preserved some motor function below the level of injury, but it is not strong enough to be functional. You also have some sensory preservation, which is a positive sign. I had begun to regain some sensation in my thighs and occasional tingling in my lower legs, which the medical team considered encouraging. However, I still had no voluntary movement below my knees and minimal strength in my hip and thigh muscles. The physical aspects of recovery were challenging enough, but the legal proceedings added another layer of complexity to my situation. 10 days after my injury, I received a visit from a woman named Laura Jensen, who introduced herself as an assistant district attorney. The police investigation into your case has been completed, she informed me. Based on the evidence collected and witness statements, we have filed formal charges against your brother and parents. Jason was facing a felony charge of reckless endangerment, resulting in serious bodily injury, which carried a potential sentence of up to 10 years in prison. My parents were charged with criminal negligence and failure to provide necessary medical assistance, which could result in up to 5 years of incarceration if they were convicted. Of course, these are the maximum penalties. Laura explained actual sentences would depend on many factors, including prior criminal history, which none of them have, and whether they accept responsibility by pleading guilty. She also informed me that I had the right to file a civil lawsuit against them for damages, regardless of the outcome of the criminal case. Medical expenses for spinal cord injuries can run into the millions over a lifetime, she said. not to mention lost wages, pain and suffering, home modifications, specialized equipment, and ongoing care needs. It was overwhelming to think about. Part of me wanted nothing more to do with my family to simply cut all ties and focus on my recovery. But the practical reality was that I was facing enormous financial challenges as a result of their actions. Alora put me in touch with a personal injury attorney named Michael Greenberg, who specialized in spinal cord injury cases. He visited me in the hospital the following day, explaining the process of filing a civil suit and what I could reasonably expect. "Your case is strong," he told me after reviewing the police reports and medical records. "The liability is clear, especially with your brother's admission that he deliberately created the hazardous condition. Your parents' homeowner's insurance will likely cover some damages, but for the full compensation you deserve, we would need to go after their personal assets as well." The thought made me uncomfortable. Despite everything, these were still my parents. But as Michael gently pointed out, my new reality would include extensive medical bills, potential lifelong care needs, and a significantly altered earning capacity. "This is not about revenge," he assured me. "It is about ensuring you have the resources you need to live as full and independent a life as possible." I agreed to let him file the lawsuit, a decision that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. Meanwhile, my physical recovery continued. After 2 weeks in acute care, I was transferred to a specialized spinal cord injury rehabilitation center. The facility was modern and well-equipped with a team of physical therapists, occupational therapists, psychologists, and rehabilitation nurses, all focused on helping patients like me adjust to life after spinal cord injury. My primary physical therapist was a man named David, who combined unwavering optimism with pragmatic realism. "Our goal is to maximize whatever return of function you experience," he explained during our first session. "But equally important is learning to be as independent as possible with the function you have right now." The days at the rehabilitation center fell into a demanding routine. Mornings began with 2 hours of physical therapy focusing on strengthening the muscles that still functioned and learning transfer techniques to move from bed to wheelchair and back again. Afternoons included occupational therapy, where I learned adaptive techniques for daily living activities from dressing myself to cooking from a seated position. There were group sessions too, where I met other people with spinal cord injuries at various stages of recovery. Some had been injured years ago and returned periodically for tune-up therapy. Others were newly injured like me, still adjusting to the radical shift in their lives. One of these patients was a woman named Tara, who had sustained a similar injury in a car accident 2 years earlier. She used a combination of leg braces and forearm crutches to walk short distances, though she relied on a wheelchair for daily mobility. "It gets easier," she told me one evening during the patient dinner hour. "Not the physical stuff necessarily, though, that does improve with time. I mean the emotional adjustment. Right now, everything in your life is defined by your injury. Eventually, it becomes just one aspect of who you are, not your entire identity." Her words gave me hope during the darkest moments when the future seemed impossibly bleak. There were days when I made progress managing to stand between parallel bars with the support of leg braces or experiencing new flickers of sensation in my feet. There were also setbacks, infections that delayed therapy, moments of despair when the magnitude of what I had lost overwhelmed me. Throughout this time, I received no contact from my family. My attorney informed me that they had been instructed by their legal counsel not to communicate with me directly due to the pending criminal and civil cases. Part of me was relieved. Another part felt the absence as yet another abandonment. Friends and colleagues from the elementary school where I taught stepped in to fill the void. They organized a rotation of visitors to break the monotony of hospital life, brought home cooked meals to supplement the institutional food, and set up a fundraising campaign to help with expenses not covered by insurance. 3 months after my injury, the criminal cases against my family moved toward resolution. Jason accepted a plea deal admitting to felony reckless endangerment in exchange for a 5-year sentence with 2 years to be served in prison and 3 on probation. My parents also took plea agreements, receiving 2 years of probation and 400 hours of community service, each along with mandatory counseling. The civil case took longer to resolve. Michael, my attorney, deposed each family member, collecting their sworn testimony about the events leading to my injury. The process was grueling but necessary, forcing them to acknowledge under oath the reality of what they had done. 6 months after filing the lawsuit, we reached a settlement. My parents' homeowner's insurance paid out its maximum liability of $1 million. Additionally, my parents agreed to sell their house and liquidate a significant portion of their retirement savings to create a trust fund of an additional $2 million for my ongoing care needs. It was a substantial sum enough to cover my immediate medical expenses, modifications to make my apartment accessible, and provide a financial cushion as I figured out what my professional future might look like. But no amount of money could restore what I had lost, both physically and emotionally. By the 8-month mark after my injury, I had made what my medical team considered remarkable progress. I had regained some function in my leg muscles enough that with specialized braces and a walker, I could take short, labored steps. It was not true walking, not the easy, unconscious movement I had once taken for granted, but it was more than many with similar injuries ever achieved. I was discharged from inpatient rehabilitation, continuing with outpatient therapy 3 times a week. I moved back to my apartment, which had been modified with ramps, wider doorways, and an accessible bathroom. A part-time caregiver helped with tasks I could not yet manage independently. I also began the process of reimagining my professional life. While returning to classroom, teaching did not seem feasible. The school district offered me a position as a curriculum specialist, a role I could perform largely from home with occasional visits to schools. Throughout this period of physical recovery and practical adjustment, I was also engaged in another kind of healing, working with a therapist named Claire, who specialized in trauma and family dynamics. What happened to you was not just a physical injury, Claire pointed out during one of our sessions. It was the culmination of a lifetime of emotional abuse and neglect. The paralysis in your legs is visible, but there are other invisible wounds that need healing too. With her guidance, I began to process not just the trauma of the injury itself, but the deeper patterns of family dysfunction that had made it possible. The constant invalidation of my experiences, the golden child and scapegoat dynamic between Jason and me, the way my parents had consistently prioritized appearances over my well-being. Your family failed you in the most fundamental way. Claire said they had one job to protect you and care for you. Instead, they caused you harm and then refused to acknowledge it. Acknowledging this truth was painful but ultimately liberating. It allowed me to see that my injury, devastating as it was, had also freed me from the toxic family system that had caused me so much suffering throughout my life. "Do you think you will ever reconcile with them?" Claire asked during one session. I considered the question carefully. I do not know. Part of me thinks there is no coming back from this. Another part wonders if these legal consequences might finally force them to confront the reality of their behavior. Either way, she said, your healing does not depend on their acknowledgement or changes. It is something you do for yourself. And slowly, painstakingly, that is what I began to do. Heal not just my body, but my sense of self, my understanding of what family should be and what relationships I deserved in my life. As I approached the 1-year anniversary of my injury, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Jason writing from prison. The envelope sat unopened on my kitchen table for 3 days before I found the courage to read it. Inside was a lengthy, handwritten apology, the first genuine one I had ever received from my brother. He wrote about the therapy he was undergoing in prison, how he was finally confronting the person he had been and the harm he had caused. He made no excuses for his behavior and asked for nothing in return, not even forgiveness. I understand if you never want to hear from me again, he wrote in conclusion. I would not blame you, but I wanted you to know that I am truly sorry for the pain I have caused you, not just on that day, but throughout our lives. You deserved so much better. The letter left me with complicated feelings. It seemed sincere, but I was not ready to let Jason back into my life if I ever would be. Still, there was a certain closure in having my experiences finally acknowledged by someone who had been there. My parents never reached out directly, though I heard through mutual acquaintances that they had moved to Florida, starting over in a smaller house with whatever assets they had managed to retain after the settlement. As for me, I was building a new life, different from what I had planned, certainly more challenging in many ways, but also rich with new meanings and connections. The friends who had stood by me during my hospitalization became my chosen family. The disability advocacy community I had joined gave me a sense of purpose and belonging I had never experienced in my biological family. And somewhere along the way, I discovered a resilience within myself that I had not known existed, a capacity not just to survive trauma, but to find meaning and even growth in its aftermath. 2 years have passed since that fateful day at my brother's birthday party. 2 years since a cruel prank and a family's callous indifference changed the course of my life forever. 2 years of surgeries, rehabilitation, adaptation, and profound emotional work. My life today bears little resemblance to what it was before. I live in a different apartment now, a ground-floor or unit in a building with full accessibility features. I drive a car with hand controls. I work remotely most days, though I visit schools several times a month to train teachers on the curriculum I have helped develop. Physically, I have made what my doctors consider remarkable progress. With leg braces and forearm crutches, I can walk short distances, though I still use a wheelchair for most of my daily mobility. I have regained sensation in about 60% of my lower body, though it remains altered, sometimes manifesting as pins and needles or hypersensitivity rather than normal feeling. There are good days and bad days. Days when I move with relative ease and almost forget the limitations of my body, and days when pain spasms or complications like urinary tract infections remind me forcefully of all that has changed. But the most significant healing has not been physical. It has been the internal journey from victim to survivor, from someone defined by what was done to her to someone who actively shapes her own story. 6 months ago, I became involved with a local advocacy group for spinal cord injury survivors, serving as a peer mentor for newly injured patients. Twice a week, I visit the same rehabilitation center where I once spent months relearning basic life skills. I sit with people who are where I was 2 years ago, consumed by grief and fear, uncertain if life can ever be good again. It does not get easier, I tell them, echoing what Tara once told me. But you get stronger and you find new ways to define what matters. Through this work, I met Thomas, a physical therapist specializing in neurological injuries. Our professional relationship gradually evolved into friendship and more recently into a tentative romance. He sees me for who I am, not defined by my disability, but not ignoring it either. With him, I am learning what healthy love feels like, built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine care. As for my family, that chapter remains complicated. Jason was released from prison 4 months ago, having served his full 2-year sentence. He wrote to me again asking if we might meet someday when I feel ready. I have not yet decided if such a meeting will ever be part of my healing journey. My parents remain in Florida, living their lives separate from mine. Occasionally, I receive secondhand news about them through distant relatives. They have apparently told a sanitized version of events to their new community, painting themselves as devoted parents supporting their daughter through a tragic accident. The truth, as always, in my family has been reshaped to protect their image. But their narrative no longer has power over me. I have learned that my truth does not require their acknowledgement to be valid. My pain does not need their recognition to be real. This has been perhaps the most profound lesson of my journey. That validation must ultimately come from within. For someone raised to doubt her own experiences, to question her own pain, this realization has been revolutionary. I have also learned about the true meaning of family. That it is not necessarily defined by blood or legal ties, but by who shows up when you are at your most vulnerable, by who stays when staying gets difficult, by who sees your pain and responds with compassion rather than dismissal. My chosen family has grown over these 2 years. It includes Sarah, the paramedic, who first recognized the seriousness of my injury and ensured I received proper care. Rachel, the nurse, who intervened when no one else would. David, my physical therapist who pushed me to achieve more than I thought possible. Claire, who helped me navigate the emotional landscape of trauma and recovery. And now Thomas, who loves me, not despite my scars, but with full acknowledgement of how they have shaped me. Together, these connections have taught me what healthy attachment looks like, what it feels like to be believed, to be supported, to be valued simply for who I am, rather than for maintaining convenient appearances. Last month, I completed my master's degree in educational psychology, specializing in trauma-informed teaching practices. Next fall, I will begin a new position as a consultant for the school district training educators to recognize and support children experiencing various forms of trauma, including family dysfunction. It feels like a way of honoring my own journey while creating meaning from the pain I have experienced. Perhaps that is the ultimate form of healing, not erasing the wound, but transforming it into something that serves a purpose greater than oneself. My paralysis will always be part of my story, as will the family dynamics that contributed to it. But neither defines the entirety of who I am or what my life can mean. Sometimes when I am with Thomas or surrounded by friends laughing and fully present in the moment, I realize with a start that I am happy, not despite what happened, but in a way that incorporates it into a larger narrative of resilience and growth. Other times, usually late at night when pain keeps me awake, I still struggle with anger and grief for what was taken from me. The physical abilities I lost, the family relationships that even if toxic represented my primary attachments for 28 years, the sense of safety in the world that may never fully return. But even in those dark moments, I am no longer alone with my pain. I have learned to reach out to allow myself to be vulnerable with those who have earned my trust, to accept help without shame, to acknowledge my limitations without being defined by them. If there is wisdom to be gained from trauma, perhaps it is this: that our wounds shape us, but they need not determine us. That even the deepest betrayals can become catalysts for profound transformation. That sometimes it takes being broken to discover just how much strength we contain. I do not know what the future holds. My doctors say I may continue to see small improvements in function for up to 5 years post-injury. Though the most significant gains typically occur in the first 2 years, I may walk more easily someday, or I may not. Either way, I will continue to build a life that accommodates my reality while stretching the boundaries of what seems possible. What I do know is that I am no longer the woman who entered that birthday party 2 years ago, desperate for approval from people incapable of truly seeing me. I am someone new, forged in the crucible of trauma and recovery. Stronger in the broken places, as Hemingway once wrote, more authentic, more compassionate, more aware of both my vulnerability and my power. And that perhaps is the most unexpected gift to emerge from this ordeal. The discovery of a self-worth fighting for, worth believing, worth loving. If you are watching this and find yourself in a situation where your pain is dismissed, where your reality is denied by those who should protect you, please know that you deserve better. Your experiences are valid, your suffering matters, and there are people in this world who will see you truly if you can find the courage to reach beyond those who refuse to. Have you ever had your pain dismissed by someone who should have believed you? How did you find the strength to trust yourself when others would not? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support this channel and share with anyone who might need this message. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and remember, healing is not linear, but it is always possible.